Hi, Ij. Let's take a look at your essays today. We've got a line graph that you sent us, the price of 4 kinds of bread. Okay, grain, brown, white, and rye. Grain is clearly the highest, with white being the lowest. All right, let's see what happened here. The line chart, well, they're called a line graph, by the way. So we call them bar charts, pie charts, but line graphs. So, and I have a suggestion for you right here. Because I know this gets confusing for students, maybe the best thing to do is just say the diagram, because the diagram is a word that covers every single category. So I would start that. Let's see. The diagram compares the price of 4 different breads over a period of 4 years. Fine. It is clear that whole grain bread was always the most expensive bread from 2001 to 2005, and white bread was the cheapest one. Fine. In 2001, whole grain bread had the highest price with 0.8 euros, while the price of the other 3 kinds of breads were 0.2 euros cheaper. You don't need to say than the whole grain bread, because this cheaper is already comparing. Yes. So you don't need to say than the whole grain. It's just repetitive and it doesn't provide the cohesion that you want. Now, this is interesting because you say the other 3 kinds of breads. However, from what I see in this graph, we don't actually have prices for brown bread until 2002. So it's a little bit of an inaccuracy. You've only got the other 2 breads here, not 3. So you need to be careful with that, because inaccuracy will lower your task achievement score. All right, so then the prices of whole grain bread and rye bread rose at the same pace until 2004. However, there was still a gap of 0.2 euros between whole grain bread and rye, with comparatively 1.4 and 1.2 euros in 2004. Okay. Again, what I feel here is that there's a ton of repetition, and I'm curious if there's some way we can fix that. The problem with this repetition is, again, it will affect your coherence and cohesion score. What you need to be able to do is handle pronouns and synonyms and other ways to make it, or even sentence structures, to make it feel less repetitive. Like you have in every sentence the word whole grain bread. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's really quite a bit. I realize that sometimes it can't be avoided, but when it can be, it's a good idea to do so. So I already suggested taking it out here. You didn't need it. It was repetitive. And I suggest keeping it here, but maybe getting rid of the word bread, because at this point it's implied. And another thing you can do is use the former and the latter, since you've just referred to them. So here it would be appropriate to use that. It's not always appropriate to use the former and the latter, but because what you're referring to is absolutely clear, look what you could have done. However, there was still a gap of 0.2 euros between the former and the latter, with comparatively 1.4 and 1.2 euros in 2004. Okay, like I said, it's not always appropriate to use the former and the latter, and I know a lot of students get it wrong. So for this reason, if it is a structure you would like to use, I suggest maybe doing a little revision on how to use it appropriately. Here, I think it would have worked, and it would have made your essay, your task 1, feel more cohesive. There were tiny changes in the other 2 breads. Okay, this is not really IELTS language. This is really very conversational. So I would have changed, there were tiny changes. You could have said there were minor changes. That would have been better. Tiny isn't really task 1 appropriate. The price of white bread decreased slowly from 2001, between 2001 and 2005, and the price of brown bread fluctuated during this period. In 2005, whole grain bread was still the most expensive. You don't need to say bread. Okay, again, cohesion. But the price of rye reduced sharply to 0.9 euros. Brown bread was the third most expensive with 0.65, and white bread still had the lowest price. All right. I think I would have liked those end prices. So let's talk a little bit about these kinds of charts here, these line graphs. So what happens is you've got this chronological chart, and what we call these is dynamic charts, which means they show us change over time. Thus, they're called dynamic. And what I want you to do is I want you to think of these as a story. Okay, it's the story of the prices of bread. So when you hear a story or when you tell a story, what do you need to include? You need to include the beginning, the end, and any of the major points um, in the middle. Now, with something like this, it's also a matter of organization because, to be quite frank with you, I got a little confused. So let's go back 1 second. You really only have what, 20 pieces of data here? Roughly 19 if we really want to be exact. So you don't have to talk about every single one, but you should talk about the key ones. Also, a really important part of IELTS is knowing um, how to organize these. So what you did, from what I could see, is look at this. You started talking about 2001, and then you talked about okay, fine. So you talked about whole grain here, and then you talked about, let me see this, rye here. Okay, and then you talked about white bread here, and then brown bread. Okay, good. That's fine. So that was good. Looking at it again in terms of organization, you did exactly what I would have suggested. I just wanted to make sure. So you talked about the two kinds of breads in one paragraph and the other two in the other one. But what confused me just a little bit is that here again, you talked about whole grain and rye. I don't think I would have really done that. Since you had spent an entire paragraph talking about whole grain and rye, I would have concluded with those two bread types here. Okay. I would not have mentioned them again in this paragraph, which is ostensibly about brown and white bread. Okay. So that's something I would have changed. And that's something, again, it's a coherence and cohesion issue. So what you can see here is that consistently, what I'm telling you is that there are some issues with coherence and cohesion. I see that as being the weak area of your task one, whereas things like grammar are quite good. I think your task achievement is just fine. um but yes, this is the issue that I'm finding with this. There were areas where this could have been more cohesive than it was. All right, so you asked for specific uh scores for your bands, and I'm afraid that we don't do that. Although I'm trained as an IELTS examiner, it's really, I think, inappropriate to give band scores for a task one or a task two that has not been done under exam um, conditions. And also bear in mind that examiners have the official band descriptors with them when they're scoring. Okay, and since I don't have access to those right now, it would be really inappropriate for me to give you a score. What I can tell you is that it's a very good task one. It's very nice. You've done a lot of things right, but absolutely, in order to get one of those higher band scores, 7, 8, and 9, cohesion needs to be improved. Okay, let's take a look at your task two. All right, so let's move on to your task two. New technologies have changed the way children spend their free time. Do you think the advantages of this trend outweigh the disadvantages? Fine. Today, children can enjoy various new technologies in their spare time, and there are more new entertainment devices in the society. In my opinion, the demerits of this trend obviously outweigh the merits. All right, I like this. It's brief, you've rephrased, and most importantly, you've included your opinion. This is really important if you're aiming for a band 7 and higher. When they ask you a direct question or they give you a command, when they tell you what they want, as in like your opinion or so forth, you really need to give it in your introduction. Okay, you did that, and so that's very good. I think if there was one thing I would have changed, it might have been this section of the sentence. Today, children can enjoy various new technologies in their spare time, and there are more new entertainment devices in this society. I felt like they were kind of disjointed, these two ideas. And so I would have combined them in a way that maybe made more sense to link them together in one sentence. So, how about something like, today, children can enjoy various new technologies in their spare time, and there are more entertainment devices that allow them to do so. Okay, so that's something I would have changed. This way, it makes sense that you're linking these two ideas together that allow them, okay, so you've got some cohesion here, to do so. Using to do so also creates cohesion. So it's kind of like a two for one sort of thing. And I think it makes the sentence make more sense. Okay, let's continue. Some people believe that new technologies have two advantages for children. Clear, good. Firstly, children could gain more information than before. We gathered information from newspapers and magazines 10 years ago, but now people use their smartphones to gain much more information. All right, again, look, cohesion. Gain more information and then gain more information. There were ways to show this idea, okay, to express it without using exactly the same vocabulary. So let's try it. But now people use their smartphones to do this, okay? Or, but now people use their smartphones for this purpose, okay? So you can see that this is linking, and then we just use another word to, to provide some more clarity, okay? So again, I'm seeing cohesion being an issue here. From this, good, that's perfect. Children could view and learn more knowledge. I don't know how you view knowledge. That's a little bit of a strange word here. Could acquire. Okay, and then you don't need to say learn. From this, children could acquire more knowledge. In addition, playing with new technologies like PlayStation 5 and VR glasses could train their brains. The games in these devices are very complicated, so they help children develop the abilities of dealing with multitasks and concentration singular. We don't say concentrations. Okay. That's nice. I feel like in terms of task achievement, you maybe could have said a little more. This is pretty textbook, what you're doing here. So you've got a very clear topic sentence, which I liked. You've got a main idea, and then you support it, and you've got a main idea, and you support it. And that's good. These are the things that you absolutely need to do. But if you're aiming for a 7, an 8, and so forth, you may want to go a little deeper. Perhaps you could have used some sort of piece of research. You can make it up. No one's going to test you, but you could make it up. You could say something like studies have shown that children who engage in these types of games are able to focus more on academic tasks. Okay, so something like that would have just really added that extra layer of support to make it a higher scoring essay in terms of task achievement again. Despite the above arguments, there are 3 main disadvantages of this trend. Now, 3 I don't think is such a great idea. You've already told me 2, okay, and now it's showing it's kind of lopsided, so it feels like this is going to be heavier. If you were going with 2 in the first one, you should probably stick to 2 in the second one as well, all right? You do want to have a balanced, you want to have balanced paragraphs, okay, as much as possible without being obsessive. So let's see. The primary problem of this trend is that children may lose self-discipline because of various technologies. Okay. Smartphones, computers, and iPads occupy too much time, and even an adult may have no ability to control himself, not to mention a kid. All right, so I'm never a big fan of the word kid in these essays. While the essays are not academic per se, it's still a good idea to avoid language that feels really kind of informal. Okay, so just say a child, it's fine. I found this sentence a little strange in terms of its construction and the tenses you used. So let's try it. Smartphones, computers, and iPads here too, not just occupy, but also may occupy. So this is something called hedging. You don't want to be absolute. You don't want it to sound like everybody does this. This is a general, overall, overarching statement. You don't want that. You want to show that, look, this may exist. This is a possibility, but I understand that maybe it's not an absolute 100% across the board. So we use words like may or perhaps, things like this, okay? So or often. So let's try that. Smartphones, computers, and iPads often occupy too much of a child's time, and even adults may have no ability to control themselves. Um, yeah, I see what you want to do here. Maybe you could have said much less a child. Okay, it's fine that way. Secondly, using modern devices means a lack of outdoor activities. For instance, some children spend many hours on the NBA 2K online game instead of a real basketball competition with their friends. This trend, therefore, causes, not caused, it does now, causes many physical problems for children. Moreover, the new entertainment measures have resulted, you want to say, in not far relations, that's awkward, in isolation. How about in weaker friendships, weaker bonds? Okay. So this new entertainment measure has resulted in weaker relationships with friends, which is harmful to the development of children. There are few opportunities for children to have face-to-face communication because they can do whatever they want with digital devices. Okay. So it's nice, but you really should have left out one of these arguments. What I would have left out here is this one because it's the one that's the least supported. Okay. You said a lack of outdoor activities. They spend many hours instead of a game. This causes physical problems. Yeah, but you don't tell us what those physical problems are. Okay. What results in this? So when you talk to me about physical problems, my mind goes to, gosh, a million things. What I need from you for this to be really well supported is some specific information. So you could talk to me about diabetes. You can talk to me about obesity. You could talk to me about lower reduced cardiovascular health. Okay. Things like this. All right. For this to be considered well supported. I thought this was a little better. Okay. In terms of the development. So again, these are the kinds of things that separate a good essay from a very good essay. And when I talk about a very good essay, I mean ones that go into those top 3 band scores. Okay. So again, it's an issue of task achievement here. Let's continue. In conclusion, while there are, don't mention the number. You don't need to. In addition, well, in conclusion, while there are merits to this trend, uh, the disadvantages are more harmful. This feels a little repetitive. I think you could have said a little bit more here. I'm always a big fan of brief conclusions. Okay, all the conclusion really needs to do is just highlight the main things that you talked about. This for me is a little too repetitive and a little too not really um not really highlighting the things that you mentioned. So why don't we do something different like this? In conclusion, while the merits of this trend, like improved concentration, no, let me try that again. In conclusion, while there are merits of this trend, like improved concentration in children, the disadvantages, such as social isolation, are far greater, period. And then you don't need to say the drawbacks outweigh the merits. You've already said that. You've said they're far greater. So then you can just finish with a thought-provoking comment, or maybe like a prediction for the future. You could say something like, in the future, more effort must be made to allow children to engage in outdoor activities rather than indoor with devices. Okay, something like this. That's how you need to do it. And that's how you really wrap it up. Now, you asked me for some advice here, and I think I kind of read it. Let's see. Subpoints. Okay. Yeah, like I said, I would try to balance it because then it feels lopsided. It feels like you haven't developed both parts fully. All right. So try to keep them balanced in terms of number. Yeah, and the 3 points were too many because exactly it did lack argumentation. I really felt like that one section was not. Basically, what you're doing is when you're using 3 arguments, there is it's almost impossible. I don't want to say it's impossible, but it becomes very difficult to really support your arguments well, especially in 40 minutes. So it's better to stick to the two that you had, okay? And then just really develop them a little further. So I see a lot of really great things in this set of essays. I see a lot of potential for this to be a high scoring writing tasks actually. But there are some things, as I already mentioned, coherence and cohesion are a big thing. I found them as a problem in both of your tasks. And then, of course, there were some things here in task achievement that I thought were an issue. Okay. So I hope you found this helpful. I hope we can work with you and help you improve so you can get the IELTS score you need. And I look forward to hearing from you. Good luck.